morning and welcome to the Morning Spotlight Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ham, coming to you as always from the Spotlight Studios here in Morristown, New Jersey, not Mike Ham, New Jersey. My guest today is the CEO of Rocket Growth Agency. He's a personal branding coach that helps creative business owners build a Rockstar brand so they can get noticed, feel confident, and bring in more clients. He has over 20 years of experience working with Fortune 100 and 500 companies and marketing and advertising agencies. He's also the host of the Rocket Live streaming show and podcast and co-host of the Galaxy of Geeks Podcast. He is Chris Vaglio. Chris, welcome.
Hey, welcome. Thank you so much, man. This is great. I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you on. I mean, honestly, you are probably on Clubhouse and on different platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, basically all my platforms, always one of the guys that's beating the Morning Spotlight drum the loudest, which I really appreciate. So that's why I was like, there's no way I'm not going to have Chris on,
Yeah.
So
I'm really psyched to be here. No, it's a great show, man. You're doing great work, and I love the interviews you do, and it's really awesome. So I'm always happy to support.
No, I appreciate that. And the other thing too is obviously, I mean, you've seen a lot of the episodes and maybe the video clips and all that kind of stuff. And normally I'm wearing Morning Spotlight gear. But because I had Chris Vaglio, my punk rock king, I needed to make sure that I had music stuff on. And then I was searching through my apartment or the Spotlight Studios, to try to find music stuff that I own. So I went with my Marty Ray hat. Marty Ray was a guest on the show. And then we were just talking about Nashville before we got on the air. I got my Nudies Honky Tonk t-shirt on from the Nudies bar in Nashville. Not a nudie bar for anybody listening.
No, it's a juke joint.
Right. Yeah, it's an actual bar. All right, so you're here.
Yep, I'm here.
We're talking about a lot of different stuff today. We're going to really get all over the place with, the Rocket Growth Agency, with the podcast, with the Galaxy of Geeks and all this other stuff. So I want to make sure we cover it all. So you're a Jersey guy, grew up in the punk rock scene. Tell me what that experience was like and why punk rock?
Yeah, that is an awesome question. So I'll do a little bit of backstory and then I'll lead up to the punk rock era of my life. So I grew up around music my whole life. I mean, my parents were big into classic rock. So I mean, I grew up on a steady diet of the Beatles and Zeppelin and Doors and Stones, all that awesome music, the stuff that you hear every day on classic rock radio. And it wasn't until I was born in 1974. My uncle was 11 years older than me, so he was basically my de facto older brother, and he was the one who got me into Kiss and Van Halen, which is one of my favorite bands of all time. And so that was my introduction. So it was I went from Beatles to Stones and Zepp to Kiss to Halen, and then eventually into Ozzy, and then getting way into metal, so Metallica and Slayer. So I became a full-on metalhead for sure. I always was into punk. My introduction into punk was, I think for a lot of people, or at least for me, it seems to be a lot of people. So I found the Ramones, and the Ramones to me were I just always loved the Ramones. And it was if out of the mainstream punk stuff, it's the thing that you would hear mostly on radio. And I always dug the Ramones. There was a band in high school. So I went to two high schools because I went to Passaic Valley my freshman and sophomore year. And then when my family moved, we moved to Morris County. And that's where I finished. I went to Morris Hills for my junior and senior year. So in Passaic Valley, there was this local punk band called The Fiends. And they were the band of the the school band. Every school has that band, and so the Fiends were that, and they had this Ramones meets Misfits kind of a sound. And I mean, I just remember they would make all their shirts in school and sell them, and you could buy records out of lockers. It was just this awesome scene. And I started going to shows and going to see the Fiends play. And that's where you started to go to places like the Pipeline and Studio One. And I was already getting wow, this is really cool. It's metal, but just a different kind of a vibe. And then when I got to college, that's when I started going full on into the whole punk and hardcore scene here in New Jersey. And so still, while always maintaining my metal side and my heavy metal roots, I just fell headfirst into the scene, because for me it became something that was as much of a metal fan as I was, and I always wanted to play in bands, and I learned how to play guitar, and I idolized Eddie Van Halen. He was the reason why I wanted to start playing. I was just never good enough to be that, to be that metal player. I didn't put in the 10,000 hours of required like guitar shreddery to like master the instrument. But punk to me and hardcore like spoke to me because I was like, I'm really into this music. I could play this. Like this I could actually play. I could be in a band. So I dove into that, started bands, started putting shows on at Legion halls, and because that was something else you could do. Like, oh my God, we don't have a place to play? Okay, fine, we'll just put a show on in like backyards and basements and rent out Legion halls and things like that. And then I got into like selling records. I used to have like a distro, a distribute, like basically I would buy records from other bands and like indie distribution outlets, and like almost like a flea market. Like you'd set up and sell records at shows. And so I was doing all that. I also got involved in college radio. So I was DJing like on Thursdays from 7 to 9. I had a show called The Phantom Zone with Mr. Chris. And so I used to play like punk and hardcore and indie rock music. So from probably about like 1993 to 2001, I was like really involved in the scene. And the reason why I got into it once again was the musical aspect, but then the other side kicked in for me that I didn't realize till like I was in it, and a little bit later in life when I looked at it, like being involved in the scene gave me a confidence in myself I didn't really have. It was a self-confidence thing of really believing in myself and tapping into like my creativity and becoming comfortable with that. Like I was never, I was always outgoing and things like that, but I was never comfortable with myself. And I don't know, punk and hardcore just, it gave me an outlet and gave me a way to say like, hey, it's okay to be yourself and it's okay to take risks and try these things. And I just gained this confidence in myself that I never really had before. It's hard to 100% articulate it, but it was definitely, I felt like a switch like went off, and that was like
almost like a place that you belonged, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It was like, I felt like, as I always say, it's just, we're all misfits, and it's kind of like, oh, join the scene, and people are coming from all over the place. And believe me, punk hardcore definitely attracts people who are going through some serious like issues, because it is that like, and as much as I say it's this whole welcoming thing, there's definitely a lot of parts of like, well, it's like any scene, right? There's extremes one way or the other, and cliques and it popular, but it's like that's just gonna happen with any scene. But it was the one thing that, as much as I loved metal, I just felt like I belonged more in there, like I could relate to it. And like I said, it was like a switch that went off for me, that I felt like, wow, I could do things, like I can make things happen. I can be in bands, I can sell records, I can be artistic, like, and no one's judging me. Right. It was that's the way I kind of felt.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, this is very early in your answer, but you mentioned Kiss. So fun story. When I used to live in Rochester, which was in 2015, 16, or I lived there 2014 and 2016, right. Kiss did a concert at Blue Cross Arena. And a friend of mine worked for the ESPN affiliate in Rochester and got free tickets. And he asked the roommates if anybody wanted to go. Everyone said no. And I was like, nah, I don't know. I don't know any Kiss songs, even though I wound up knowing like every single one. And I mean, like, I don't know how old Gene Simmons and all those guys are now, but like they're old. They're old dudes. And they still come out with like the face paint.
It's amazing.
They're on zip lines going on. It was one of the best concerts I've ever been to in my life. And I got to go for free, which was even cooler. Yeah. But I just had to share that because, it was like one of those things that you never, like, you didn't think that it would be that cool because it's like Kiss. They got the face paint. It's like a, clown show. Yeah. And then you get in there like, oh my God, like these guys rock. And like, I know every song. I didn't even realize that I did. I mean, it was insane.
Kiss is a good time, man. Kiss is always they always put on a good show. They've been playing the same set list for 30 years, but
right, and
they put on a good show.
Yeah, and everybody comes in. There was like a dad with like his like 4-year-old kid. The kid's all painted with the hair and everything. Yeah, I mean, it was.
I love that. That always I love when you go to a Kiss show and you see like the dad with the kids and they're all painted. It's fun.
Right. Yeah. So at what point in this process, I think you said this, you were in the scene, so to speak, up until like 2000. Did you actually start to think that maybe you could take well, I guess Gray Sky
Right.
Films was
Hmm.
your next endeavor, right?
Yes, so Gray Sky Films was the first business I started. Well, I guess you could say. Well, it was the first. I mean, my first business was selling records, but that
Yeah.
wasn't really. I mean, it was a
Like,
business,
yeah,
but it
adult
was.
business, right?
Yeah, exactly, adult business. So, it was actually so Mark, my business partner Mark, and I, we had met at CCM, and we actually met on a registration line, and we became like instant friends because he was like a metalhead and he had the hair like down to his ass, and I was like, this dude looks metal. I don't know what's going on, so I'm going to ask him what's going on, and that's kind of how a friendship started. We wound up
Yeah.
registering for all our classes together, and then and then the semester started. I'm like, hey, I remember that dude, and we became good friends, and we went to CCM together, and then we both went to William Paterson together, and we graduated the communications program there with an emphasis in filmmaking. And like everybody else, it's kind of like you go through this stuff, but they don't really set you up for like how to actually get work or like run like none of that stuff.
Yeah.
They
How to
teach
sell.
you any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, none of that. It's
Right.
it's just like, okay, you're done. Here's your degree. Go have fun. And like anything else, so we're trying to get jobs on sets and PAing and all that. And this was like it was like 1998, and MTV2 was a thing, and like all these bands that I was talking about like in the hardcore punk scene were like getting like airplay on like MTV2, and so I remember Mark was like, hey, why don't we just start our own business and make music videos for our friends' bands and all that? And we're like, and to us it was like, yeah, of course they'll do this. It'll be a gateway into like movies and commercials, and we'll be living in Hollywood lighting $100 bills on fire, and so that was but that was the start of it. And much like being in punk rock and hardcore, it's like, yeah, sure, let's do it. Like that was about it. And so we started doing this business, like not having any business skill whatsoever, not knowing what the hell we were doing. We started Gray Sky Films, and we originally started out like in the wedding. We just started figuring things out. Like, okay, like we'll start making wedding videos, and we'll take money from that, and we'll invest it into the business, and we'll keep growing, and we'll try to get music videos and all that. And that's sort of how we started. And we found a mentor like very early on who like just totally took us under his wing and was like, I could see things in you guys, and
Yeah.
really taught us the fundamentals of business, and was just there for us, which was like, it was like going to school. It was amazing. But from there we learned how to do business, and it was like, I don't want to fast forward through some of this stuff, but it's like literally from that, it was like 20 years of, we learned how to do it. We grew a company to 7 figures. I mean, 2 guys that had no idea what they were doing, filmmakers. We were running a business out of the front porch of my house at the time. And it's crazy to think like how much we did. And like, it's like, you could look back and you're like, you guys had no business being in business. But at the
Yeah.
same time, it's like, well, why not? We just,
Right.
we did it, and we learned from it, and we were smart. We tried to not make the same mistakes twice, but we learned from those mistakes, and we implemented what we learned like right away into it. And that was just something that we just, and once again, leaning on that punk and hardcore background, because he was involved in that too, and the metal and all that, is like, you just learned how to like this DIY mentality, like learn from it, get better right away, and make the next mistake, but like learn from that and just keep constantly getting better.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. I mean, that was the principle of it. And we were just open-minded, and looked at opportunities and talked to people and appreciated everybody's time and advice that they gave us along the way. Cause that's kind of how we began to build it.
Did you have a background in video, or you're just like, screw it, we're gonna figure it out as we go?
Well, so Mark and I, we both went to school for filmmaking. So
Okay.
we,
All right.
we went to school for filmmaking. We had made, our student projects and all that. So we had that background. And like, even in like the scene, I started like making videos and,
Yeah.
and like doing like little mini docs on like just all kinds of like silly stuff. But yeah, I mean, we were very much rooted in that like indie filmmaker community, and that's what we wanted to do. But we just didn't know how to like turn it into a business. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, you can go make a movie, but you got to go raise this money, and it's very expensive. And then like right along this same time, like Canon came out with what was called, it was like a revolutionary thing, was a digital video camera, the Canon XL1. And it was like, you shot a mini DV, but you're able to kind of get this like look that you weren't able to get on like other cameras. You didn't have to have the big beta cam, the giant thing. Like you could create a really nice looking video with a camera that was about like, you know, half the size of my arm and like weighed about 8 pounds. Like it was awesome. And that was like the quote unquote digital revolution. And we hit that like right at that time when we started the business. And we just rode that wave. I mean, we were like, we embraced it. And because up till then, like I like learning how to edit. Like we learned how to edit like cutting film, like on big giant flatbed desks. Like we literally cutting film with a razor and taping it together. That's how I learned how to edit.
Then.
Nothing like that. So it was like when I could edit on a computer, like the first version of Adobe, it was like, whoa, this is so much better than like cutting pieces of film and taping it together.
Right. So you mentioned that you were doing like some weddings at the beginning. You were trying to do like music videos for your friends' bands or whatever.
Yeah.
Was there a moment in that lifespan? I think you said 20 years with Gray Sky. Was there a moment in that 20 years, I would assume somewhere early on, not hopefully not at year 20, where you were like, hey, like we actually got a project that's going to like really move the needle on this business. And we're like actually businessmen. Was there like a project that you worked on that was that project?
It wasn't necessarily a project, but it was a mind shift change, right? So we were about 7 years into our business when Mark and I had that like moment of being two guys who were like literally just like hustling to make money and doing anything and working the music scene and all that. And that was a ton of fun. I mean, we got involved in the music industry. We were making videos for like My Chemical Romance, and we were working with all these like indie labels. I mean, we got to work with Sony, so we got to like meet and film Tony Bennett and Sting and Chris Bodie, and we were doing all these awesome projects, and it was really growing. And then 2007 happened, and that the bubble burst, and the market went crazy, and it really hit us hard. And then on top of that, there was a big shift in the music industry. This was like Napster and downloading. We were getting a lot of gigs from Sony, BMG, and like overnight, everybody was gone. Everybody we worked with was let go because there was a new regime that came in. They fired everybody. It was nuts. And we were like, holy crap, like, what are we going to do? And we had this like total aha moment. And once again, it's like, this is why you have mentors in your life and things happen.
Yeah.
And a person we hadn't seen in a while came back to us, asked us how we were doing. We were like, I don't know. You know, we didn't know if we were going to even what we were going to do. We were already thinking about maybe we should pack this up. Maybe, hey, we gave it a good try.
Yeah.
And he hit us up and he said, listen, this book, you guys should really read this book. It's called The E-Myth. And it's The E-Myth, Why Most Small Businesses Fail and How to Fix Them. And that book was like getting struck by lightning for us. It was like the wake-up call we needed to be like, holy cow, we got to work on our business, not in our business. And so much of that resonated. And that point, which was about 7 years into our business, that's when we became business guys. That's when we really became like real. Well, it was like we went to business school for 7 years. And now, and now we actually, you know, still not knowing everything, but that was the shift for us. And once we flipped that switch, it was like now we're building a company that's really built for like going after like the kind of work and just our mentality. Everything changed from that point on. And that's what the company grew. We started getting employees. We processed, and I mean, it just like running like a real company.
Yeah.
And working on these projects. And that was, we left the music industry behind and we focused on corporate and commercial work and working with advertising and marketing agencies and really understanding like how to sell, how to position ourselves. Like all those things started like really clicking with us. And, and we just kept going and going and going.
Yeah. So then for, the next 13 years, so I had mentioned to you before we got on here that I was doing like Chris Vaglio research, a lot of YouTube research. And one of the things that I saw on there was The Last Spruce.
Yes,
is that like a movie that you made with Gray Sky?
Yeah. So it's The White Spruce. And,
White Spruce. Sorry.
Yeah. And it was one of, so Mark and I had, during the course of our years together, we had delved into definitely, still trying to drive the passion of independent filmmaking. and making short films. And we very, very early on, we had done a really terrible short film called The Master Plan, which no one will ever see. Then we did a documentary called Parking Lots of the Subway series, and it was when the Mets and Yankees played each other in the World Series, and we did a whole, like, I guess trying to be like our version of Heavy Metal Parking Lot, and it was all right. We got into a couple film festivals, which was kind of cool. Then we did a third short film, which is we spent a year working on a script. We raised like $30,000 for it, and it was called What's Your Problem? And that you can find online. And that was like our slapstick comedy with a bunch of wannabe private detectives, and that's out there. And then the film we made in 2014, I think it was, 2014, was called The White Spruce. And that was a short film that we created. Mark and I invested our own money into it, and we shot it over 3 days, 3 nights, 3 of the coldest nights in November outside. Oh my God, it was so brutally cold, but it was something we really wanted to do, and it came out great. I mean, we were really proud of that film. We won a bunch of awards for it. Mark won a Best Director award at one of the festivals. We won Best Comedy at the Garden State Film Festival. It was really, really a fun, like, labor of love, and everybody involved in it was totally committed to it, and it was awesome. So, and that's a comedy too, because we just love comedy, and so it's definitely a weirder comedy. It's got elements of slapstick and little bizarreness in it, but it takes place it's Christmas Eve. It's not a Christmas movie,
right?
But it takes place on Christmas Eve, and our he's like a lovable loser, our character, and he's holding the last white spruce for the girl of his dreams at this Christmas tree farm that he works at.
Yeah. You know what I also think in doing that research is for whatever reason, a common theme through what you just told me about White Spruce and some of the stuff that I found on YouTube is Antler Wound is like Christmas themed punk rock.
It is.
And honestly, the behind the scenes video that I just watched, literally right before you logged on, I finished that video. I was laughing my ass off. I thought it was like the funniest thing ever. Like the guy with like the eye black and everything. I thought that was great.
Matt.
Yeah. So tell us about what that is.
Yeah.
Eventually we're going to get into Rocket. I know we're
No, it's fine. It's I mean this is all
build. Right?
Yeah, this is all part of my story, and I'm always happy to tell the story. So yeah, Antler Wound is our holiday hardcore punk band, and it's myself, Mark Sorreo, Matt Horitz, and Kathy Beck. All of us at Gray Sky, and it's been a joke thing that we've done. We used to literally just do it for our employee, everybody we worked with. We would do our holiday party, and we would get together and we would do these songs that Matt would write. Matt Matt orchestrates everything. He writes the music, he writes the songs. It's amazing. And this was Matt is a drummer. He's an awesome, awesome drummer. He plays in a band called the Brixton Riot, and he's been involved in the punk hardcore scene forever. Mark is an amazing drummer. When I met Mark in school, he was playing in a hardcore band called Shatter. I've always played guitar. Kathy's an incredible bass player and an amazing vocal. She plays in a police tribute band called Roxanne, which is they are sick. Like, they've got everything down to they even do the live versions of Police songs to a T. So, it's funny. So, everybody there is they're such great musicians, and then we're all kind of doing this punk hardcore band. But so this was, it was started off as a very inside jokey thing, and it still is a joke. But then, so every year, Gray Sky Films does a holiday video. As it's a tradition that we started. Instead of sending out Christmas card or things like that, we would make a Christmas video, and it would be sent out to all our clients, friends, family, and all that. And every year we just kept upping the ante. And then finally we said, what if we took Antler Wound and actually did it as that? So let's make a music video for a song, and we'll release that. And then that became, well, let's actually go in and record a record, and we'll give that out to everybody. And then we attached a charity aspect to it, in which we tied in a donation to Cancer Sucks with this whole thing. So it became the music video, the record, and then a charity component. And we released all that in 2019. And we then said, well, let's do a companion making of the music, behind the music documentary, which is Matt kind of playing the character that he plays of like this like Henry Rollins-esque singer, and that's kind of how the whole thing is. And so Antler Wound is still a band. We're hoping maybe we'll do another song this for this holiday, but yeah, it's a total like fun thing that we do, and we have a great time doing it, and we are like really psyched to be able to like. So we made a video for Last Christmas, which is our cover song, and then we have 3 originals on the record, and we did a music video for Elf on the Shelf.
Yep, watch that.
And that came out this past holiday. So whether or not we make music videos for the other 2, or we just make a whole new song with a video, is still yet to be determined. But yeah, and maybe we'll actually play a gig at some point too, because normally the gigs are usually at a holiday party.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, if you invite me to the holiday party, I'll come and I'll listen. Yeah. All right. So at what point in this timeline do you start to get the idea that maybe you want to do something different? Because now you started Rocket in 2020. Yep. Which we're going to get into that too. And like what, how that went. Yeah. And like, at what point do you think that maybe you have something different to offer? Maybe you just want to try something different. I don't know. At what point do you think that that's something that you want to try to do?
Right. So that's a really, really cool question. So I've always enjoyed working with people and helping people out. My door is always open, and I've mentored people throughout the years and just done my best to share what I've learned, how I've done things, which I know a lot of people are sometimes a little fascinated with how Mark and I came up like through business and like created this company, because everybody's like, I don't understand how, like, and I'm like, I don't know either. Like, I know, but I don't know. Like, we're just like 2 guys who just, we figured it out along the way, and we're never done learning, but like, this is how we did it. So that's all I can share. Like, this is what I know. So I've always been happy to talk to people and sit down, as much as people always taking the time to talk to me.
All right, we're back.
Oh, did my
yeah, it's okay.
How did that happen?
I don't know, but we're trying to run a professional show, so if you can clean it up, that would be great. No, you're better now, so sorry. Keep going.
I wonder what happened. Okay, so anyway, so I'll back it up real quick. So I've always had my door open, and I always tried to help people along the way and do their thing and share what I know. And, it's just always been a part of me that's been there. But what happened for me is, like many other businesses, faced the challenge of, the lockdown, the pandemic that happened. And, Gray Sky was definitely not immune to that at all. I mean, our work is based on, clients working with us. And when this happened, it was like a lot of clients like pulled back, and, projects were put on hold, postponed, because what we do is in person and going on locations and filming and all that. So it was a big pause put on things. And, so Mark and I did, we did all the right things. We made sure we could take care of everybody as much as we possibly could during this time, and try to like just figure it all out like everybody else was doing. So while we were doing that, I just starting to feel more and more like, I feel like I've ready for something new. And I feel like that I've done as much as I could do here at Gray Sky for me personally. And it took a while for me to grapple with that, because I wasn't sure what I was feeling and how I was feeling it. And I really had to do a big like self-check, a gut check with myself, and be like, is this how I really feel? Or is this just a thing? Like, what is it? And it was a process, man. Really becoming honest with myself was tough, because I really wanted to make sure this was something that, because this is a huge decision for me. Yeah. I mean, I built something for 20 years, and it's just like, employees and all this. And it wasn't like, I want everybody to understand that this wasn't a decision that I was like, hey, I'm just going to walk away from a business I created for 20 years and, and start a new company. Like, it was not that. Yeah.
Right.
It was a progression, but step 1 was really becoming honest with myself and realizing it and being like, okay, this is something, yes, I want to do this. Then obviously the next hardest thing for me was telling my business partner and best friend for 25 years that this is something I wanted to do, which was something that I was really, it wasn't easy to do. But I did it. And ultimately, we worked it out. I mean, we're still great friends. I mean, we still talk to each other all the time, and we're still best friends over. And so, I'm not going to say the timing was perfect for it, but I think that things happen for a reason.
Yeah.
And anyway, we worked it through. I successfully exited in the summer of last year, at the end of the summer, and I launched Rocket Growth Agency pretty much in the fall of 2020.
Right.
I like much of everything I've done in my life, it's not like I had a complete roadmap or plan mapped out there.
I love that.
I've always been a little bit of a ready, fire, aim kind of guy, which I've learned, but I had a vision and I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to help people, and I knew that I wanted to leverage my years of experience as being a business owner and doing what I've done, the things I was talking about, but then also like my that background of that punk hardcore stuff, because to me, like realizing how much that helped me to come into my own, and then how I leveraged that, like it was like I had two versions of business school. I had like the punk rock business school I went through, and then like when we started a business, that's 7 years.
Yeah.
Like that was a whole other like, oh my God, now we're doing it, and having my mentors and things like that, and now putting it all together. So that was the genesis of it and where I wanted to go with it. And since then, since I launched it, I've really focused it in more, and it's really, it's really starting to like take shape for me.
All right. So tell us exactly what Rocket is. I know it.
Yeah, I know you know it.
But if anybody that hasn't picked up on what that could be yet, let's just give it to them first, and then we'll talk more about it.
No, I'll give it to them straight. So basically what Rocket Growth Agency is it's a personal branding agency. So what I do is I am a personal branding coach. So I specifically coach creative business owners, and I help them, what I like to say is to build a Rockstar brand so they can get noticed, feel confident, and bring in more clients. So I work one-on-one with people to do all those things, to really help them leverage their personal brand, which is one of the things I attribute to my success over the years, is that I invested in my company and everything that we did at Gray Sky, but I invested very heavily into myself and really leaned into it without actually even knowing it half the times, like leaning into like the things that make me to be able to stand out, be memorable, and to stay top of mind with people by just doing the things that I'm naturally doing.
Yeah.
And when you start to realize those things about you and you begin to leverage it, it's like basically saying, hey, I'm using my superpowers for good. Like that's really what I teach people how to do, is like leverage these things about themselves that they may not think are necessarily strengths, and use that to do the things they want to do, which is, hey, I want to get noticed. I want to feel more confident. I want to bring in more clients. That's essentially what I help people do.
Right. So just a quick question. How is it starting a business in 2020? Or is this something that's maybe more like, because you can almost do it virtual more so than maybe what you were doing at Gray Sky? So what was that? I know you got a family, you got all that kind of stuff. So it must have been a lot of pressure, I guess. Yeah.
And it still is a lot of pressure. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I mean, my wife she works full time. She's had a full time gig for years, and she loves what she does. So that was great. I mean, listen, this wasn't, and this also, let me preface this wasn't a decision I just made. Like this was something I came to, and I talked about it with my wife, because she's as much involved in this as I am. Like she is my business partner in every sense of my life partner. Like it's like, this was a together decision. But yeah, I mean, starting a business in 2020 to me it's not been easy, but starting a business isn't easy. I've definitely, this business is something I can do virtually. I was very much had that in mind. I don't need a brick and mortar location right now. I have a home office. I'm doing things. I mostly work with my clients are through virtual. I do have a couple clients where I do meet them in person at their office, but for the majority of my clients, it's what we're doing right now, and it works great. And right now, I can keep my overhead costs down, which is great, so I can control my costs. But other than that, I mean, it's like any other business. Putting yourself out there, putting the time in to market, and looking at the different things you need to do, getting your website up and running, making sure you're doing all those things you need to do, communicating, getting back to people, following up is still like. All those same things I ever did at Gray Sky are the same things I do here. Leveraging my relationships, networking, doing the follow-up. Yes, I'm my own sales guy. I mean, but I've always had to do that. It's just, it's with anything. The thing that I'm able to do now is I'm a little bit smarter than I was 20 years ago, because I've gone through experience. But it doesn't mean I'm still not making mistakes. So
Right.
I'm still making mistakes and I'm still learning from them. It's just I feel like my ramp up time is a little less. Even
Right.
though, but I'm still in year one of a brand new business. So
Yeah.
I don't take that for granted, and I understand what that's like, and so I still have all the same growing pains as anybody else who's starting a business from day one in
Yeah.
year one.
Right. All right. So let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
And I've talked about with you on
Hmm.
Clubhouse. I've talked about it with other people on the show, on other shows about authenticity.
Right.
Right. So like when I hear you talk about Rocket and unleash your inner rock star and like all that kind of stuff, what happens if there's somebody out there that's like, well, they don't like that's not their authentic self. So are there ways that you like help coach them? Because I feel like, like
Yeah.
not to say that your message is terrible, but like is there obviously it's like a case by case basis that you got
It
to help
is.
people grow that personal brand to achieve authenticity.
It is. It's a very personal thing, and I get it. And not everybody is um super outgoing,
Right.
but everybody does have that, like, they have a goal. So
Yeah.
whether it's, let's just say the goal is, hey, I need to bring in some more business, and that's part of what I have to do. I have to generate business, and whether it's their own business or they're working for a company and they have to generate business, there are things that they need to do. And oftentimes the biggest thing that I hear is, I don't know how to stand out. I don't know how to cut through the noise. I don't know how to be, looked at more than what I am. And I get that, and it's very real. I've been there so many times, and
Me too. Yeah. I think
yeah.
everybody has. Yeah.
No, everybody has, and it helps when you work with somebody. I'm working with a coach. Like, I have a coach that I'm working with now. Like, presently, I have a coach, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's actually it's how you learn. It's how you get better. And I've learned that, and I've had many coaches and consultants I've worked with at Gray Sky. So when working with somebody who's maybe feeling that way, it's really, to me, focusing in on the things that make them who they are. What do they love? What are their interests? What are you really knowledgeable about? Let's just take something like, for instance, like an accountant, right? Now, I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, accountant, it's boring, right? Okay, fine. The CPA, they do their thing, but they are a human being. Like,
Yeah.
what are those other things that make them who they are? Like, does that CPA, do they love chess? Do they love fishing? Do they love puzzles? They may like the numbers, but what about the numbers do they like? And how does that help other people? Like, what is their true passion for doing what they do? And it's really just working with people and taking it very slowly, step by step, working at their speed to help them to discover those parts about themselves, and then getting comfortable with that, and then saying, now let's put this out there in the world so people now know you as not just the accountant, but you're the accountant that ...
Yeah.
does this, does that. And that's just a little bit of it, but that's where we start. And we just start very slow and very simple. Not everybody has to be like the big, like, all right, I gotta be on Instagram and I gotta do all these things. I know people look at the things I do, but that's me, and that's what works for me, and it's what I also enjoy doing that. So I like to create content. I like to put myself out there. But my biggest recommendation for people is, like, you don't be me, be yourself. And if LinkedIn's the thing that you want to work, then work on LinkedIn. That's it. Like, if Instagram's your jam, then we'll just do Instagram. Or
Yep.
if you're not doing anything, fine, we'll work on it together and we'll find the thing that works.
Yeah. I love that answer because I feel like that's one of the things that kind of gets lost in the shuffle with authenticity is that you have to be, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like us. You got to be like the rock star guy. You got to be the coolest guy in title insurance.
Right.
But like for me, it was just a matter of like taking something where, I mean, you want to talk about CPAs, boring, title insurance, also boring.
Right.
Sorry, work. But like, it's like one of those things where I had work Mike, title insurance work Mike that would, face with clients. I had, relationship Mike, friend Mike, family Mike. Mike would just lounge around at his apartment. And eventually I was just like, this is exhausting trying to juggle all these different personalities. Like I've made the joke before on the show, like it was, I could feel the starting five for the Knicks with a few bench players with as many personalities as I was trying to keep out there.
Right.
And then at some point last year, it was like, well, the only way that I can stand out in the sea, like you were saying, the sea of social media, if that's what you want to do. And if you want to be out there and separating yourself from everybody else that sells title insurance, You got to be yourself. And that's where
Yeah.
I think the authenticity comes in, because that's ultimately what brings the trust, right? Like if you are
Absolutely.
totally yourself, you are more likely, at least in my opinion, to achieve trust with other people, right?
Absolutely. I mean, listen, the golden rule, which I don't think is ever going to change because it's as old as time itself, is people do business with people they like and they trust. Flat out. And unless your goal is to be like this like massive like influencer with like with millions of followers, then okay, fine. But like honestly, if your goal is to just be the most well-known person in your community or out of your relationships, like that's not being well known out of a million people. That's being well known out of like, your top people, like 100, 200, 500. Like what's your community? Like think about that, like before you think about like, I gotta do this and do that. Like let's just bring it down to like this level. Like I just want the people I interact with on a daily basis to like know who I am and what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But before I'm thinking about like everybody else in the world, like that's that's not my goal. My goal is to like let everybody I know who I interact with all the time, and then just keep stepping up from there, and that's it. And then eventually, like it's like ripples of water. Like they just keep going out, and that's it. That's how you look at it.
Yeah. Have you, in working with clients over the last year, let's just call it a year, over the last year, have you had moments where like you see the people that you're working with finally have that aha moment where they're just like, oh, this is me, and I've been looking for that for forever?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes it's even a case of forgetting, like they've forgotten this part of themselves, right? Once again, they didn't view this part of themselves as necessarily a strength. They kind of used it as a weakness, or just didn't think about it that way. And then when they realize it, they're like, oh my gosh, like I just had no idea, I didn't realize that I could actually use this part of me in a professional setting and have it like speak, and that's what I think is like when we talk about this, is like this is to your own like comfort level. Like I'm not saying you have to open up and share every single aspect of your life out on like LinkedIn, but like
right.
But it's just about like being a little more memorable and leveraging those things about yourself, like your best characteristics that you just may not be using. And that's why then you get like, well, I don't know how to stand out. I don't know how to like cut through the noise. And it's like, well, just start being more of yourself. Don't worry about being a version of yourself that like you think people want you to be, or that you think you need to be. Like just focus on being you. Just be the person like that you already are. Like you already have everything you need. Use them.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's great. So what about maybe aside from calling Chris Vaglio at Rocket Growth Agency, what are maybe like some actionable tips that you would give someone to maybe like at least start that process to figure out who they are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a few tips that I always like to give out. And actually I created like a little personal branding checklist that people can get at rocketchecklist.com and just download that. It's just a simple like ebook. But one of the ones I always like to share with people is what I was just kind of talking about, like finding out like what your best characteristics are, like what are those qualities. And one of the things that I learned to do was to basically find about 5 people in your network, in your life, who know you really, really well, that will totally like be honest with you, and ask them what your best qualities and characteristics are. Like, what are they? And then as a way to repay that, like you'll just gonna do that for them. Like you're gonna say, hey, and as a thank you, I'm gonna do it for you, because everybody should know. And if it's something you've done or haven't done, or maybe it has been a while, it's a nice way to check in with yourself. And once again, realize those things about yourself that you just may not know. Like you may not think that you have this like awesome smile, but somebody will be like, hey, you've got a great, great smile and you do not use it enough. Like that is a great quality of yours. And it's like, oh, wow. Like, thank you. I didn't realize that. And so, but there's a bunch of different things that you could find out, but I would recommend that you do that for sure. Another thing that I like to say is just to keep it really simple, but write down like 5 things that you're just really knowledgeable about, things that you could just talk about, things that you're passionate about. Write those down and just start with that list. And then from there, you'll start to see sort of like what branches out from each of those topics or each of those things. Like, well, here's one thing, but I could easily talk about like 15 things under that.
Yeah.
but those are really great ways to just begin that process of understanding like what sort of value you could bring to the world by talking about the things that you're already like into and passionate about and super knowledgeable about.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. All right, so since we're not getting close to we are getting close to the end, but I
Whatever.
don't want to keep it for too
No,
long.
no, whatever,
So
man.
I want to talk about the podcast.
Yeah.
So Rocket Live, you go live on Facebook every Tuesday, right?
Yep.
At
Every
4?
Tuesday at 4 p.m.
Yep.
Eastern.
Tell us tell us about that. What you guys
Sure.
talk about, the types of guests that you have on. One
Yeah.
guy I know a couple weeks ago canceled on you last minute, through no fault of his own. But he's coming back next week. I know
He
that.
is.
May
Yes.
4th. Yeah.
He's coming back on May the 4th.
May the 4th.
So
we're gonna get there too. I know that. Yeah.
Yes. So Rocket Live actually used to be called My LinkedIn Friends, and it was a show that I had started. I did some like just sporadic episodes back in 2018, and then I put it on the shelf, and then when the pandemic started and lockdown happened, it was like, what do you do? And I just was like, I didn't know what to like do to just help other than, just help my friends and people in my network. Cause everybody was like, oh my God, like, like, what are we doing for business? So I was like, well, the one thing I could help is just to try to keep people at least top of mind or relevant with my network. So I figured, why don't I take people from my network and introduce them to my network? So I'll do these short, like video interviews with them, keep it to like 10 minutes max, because LinkedIn, you can upload up to 10 minutes of video.
Yeah.
So I said, why don't I just do that? And this will be a way for me to just introduce my network to my network, make little videos, keep up some sort of creativity, and that'll be a way of me helping people out. So I started doing that, and it was cool. Like, people were like, hey, yeah, I want to do the show. Let me do it. And it was helping other people.
Yeah.
And then I applied for LinkedIn Live, and I got it after like 2 months. And I guess they saw that I was uploading all these videos. And so I got LinkedIn Live. And so I was like, well, let me start streaming live, and this will be cool. So then I wound up using StreamYard, and I was like, well, I can go longer now than 10 minutes. So why don't I just start doing like these longer interviews? I'll do it live. So I'll use LinkedIn. I'll do it on Facebook. And I said, I'll start using YouTube as well. So I created a Rocket Growth Agency YouTube channel, and that's what I started doing. And so I changed it from My LinkedIn Friends to Rocket Live. And that was probably like, I think August is when I got approved for LinkedIn Live. So I just started doing it like that. And then I said, well, now I could take the audio from that and use it as an audio podcast.
Yep.
So I started doing that as well. So I do the live show, which is every Tuesday at 4, as you said. It's Eastern Standard Time. And I usually, how it is, I'm usually interviewing an entrepreneur, a business owner, a founder, or just somebody with a really interesting story, just hearing like how they did it, where they came from, what their inspiration is. And then most importantly, what I always like to focus on too is like how they're helping others. Because I think that's a strong component of what you're doing and how you're helping others overcome, or whatever it is that they're doing as a service is helping others. So I love hearing those different stories and having people come on and share them. And it's sort of taken on like a life of its own type of a thing. I feel like I've created a little bit of a monster, but it's good. I have fun doing it. I love doing it. I will say that the audio version is a little behind on the live version, since I go live every Tuesday, and then I have to take the audio and I got to edit it up a bit and all that. But that's fine, because it just re-exposes people to maybe an interview they didn't even hear in the first place. So
Yeah, right. Miss the live, get on there. Yeah.
So if anybody wants to watch it live, they can always go to my LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube and watch it live on Tuesdays at 4. Of course, the replay is always there, and all the interviews are on my YouTube channel. So you can go back and watch every single interview, or you can go over to, if you want to listen to the audio version, you could just go to like anywhere you get a podcast, and it's just the Rocket Growth. Right now, it's just called the Rocket Growth Agency Podcast. I don't have a super sexy name for it yet. Like you.
I think it's pretty good. Morning Spotlight's okay. It's just okay. So that's an interesting story, because I didn't know that it started that way, because that's how the Morning Spotlight started. The Morning Spotlight was just a LinkedIn video series that I started in May, because it was like the same type of thing. This is why I like talking to you, because I feel like we're simpatico on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we're very much on the same wavelength on things.
And that's exactly how it started. I was doing virtual networking events that I was hosting every week, and was like, I need a way to talk to my clients more often and or at least put content out there.
Right.
And I have all these people, so I did 12 weeks worth of videos. Monday through Friday, I would post one. So 60 episodes over that span, which was a lot, which is why I transitioned it into what the show is now. But I thought that was interesting. I didn't know that about your show. So I just think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is why I think we get along so well. But yeah, it was very much the same wavelength and all that. And that's, now it's Rocket Live and still doing it every Tuesday, and people sign up, and I think I have bookings like all the way out until like July now, which is cool. And, I've thought about adding a second, every time I think about, let me add a second show on during the week, but then I'm doing so many other things, and I'm like, you know what?
Yeah,
keep
this
it
is
one. Like, I have to go, Chris, you got to say no to yourself, because there's a lot of things I'm getting involved in. Because I also do another podcast with a friend of mine from Spain, and we've been doing that podcast for several years now. It's called Galaxy of Geeks, and
tell us about that. That was like my next question. Yeah,
it's literally my friend Victor and I. We actually met at CCM. And then we kind of just lost contact with each other through the years for, different things. He moved to Spain, and we actually reconnected through podcasting because he also does like a rock and metal podcast, and he's got other friends and all that. And so we reconnected through podcasting, and then we just started talking, and we kept having all these conversations about like Star Wars and Marvel and comics and going back and forth. And finally he goes, why don't we just start a podcast like us talk, like we're already talking about this. So I'm like, all right, of course, like everything. All right, yeah, sounds good. So we started doing this podcast, and it's grown over the years for sure. And so now it's we've also integrated streaming video into it now. So now we do this. We do Galaxy Geeks every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, because it's a really good window for us because he's in Spain, so he's 5 hours ahead. So it's a little late for him, but he's kind of a night owl, so it works good in that window.
Right.
And so we go live, we broadcast that also on YouTube. We have a Galaxy Geeks Facebook private group that we broadcast it in, and then we usually broadcast it on like my public page, my page or something. And then that is also then released as an audio podcast. And that's all we really talk. We talk about sort of what's going on. Recently we've been following all the Marvel shows, so we've just wrapped up our whole Falcon and Winter Soldier. We were following that. We talked. We're actually doing we're talking about the finale this Thursday, because the finale was Friday, and we just talk about like what's going on in like whatever's going on in geekdom. So,
right. Yeah. And speaking of geekdom, I love that you always talk about how big of a Star Wars nerd you are.
Yes.
And I didn't realize it before reading this bio, or maybe it wasn't even on the bio. It was like someplace I saw that like one of your sleeves is a Star Wars themed sleeve. So what is the fascination with Star Wars? When did that start? Why did it start?
Yeah.
And, like, is it still something that you're fascinated with? And favorite movie when you're done with that whole thing?
Oh, boy. Everybody strap in. Yeah, so it is true. Yes,
It'll be another hour.
Yeah, I do have an entire Star Wars sleeve on my left arm. The only tattoo that doesn't fit in is I have a Betty Page tattoo on my forearm, but my tattoo artist did a great job like blending her into the whole thing. So the very first tattoo I got when I was 18 years old was a Star Wars tattoo, which is integrated into the sleeve as well. It's the poster from Return of the Jedi with the two hands holding up the saber. That was my first tattoo that I had gotten first, and it was a Star Wars tattoo. So over the years, it's evolved into an entire sleeve. So my fascination with Star Wars started at a very, very early age. I mean, the film came out in 1977. I was like 3-4 years old, and I just remember going. I remember my parents taking me, and I just was like completely enamored with Star Wars, like the magic of it, the toy, of course the toys, which I have. If I took my camera here, you'd see an entire rack of totes. It's just full of Star Wars toys. Like it's a sickness. So and they're not even out. They're just in totes. So
yeah, right.
So I put out a video I think on this last year where or at least an audiogram or something where I just talked about like why I love Star Wars so much, and honestly for me Star Wars it's like magic, and it's why I even got involved in like why I fell in love with filmmaking and making videos and all that, because there's a magic involved, and Star Wars to me is like the greatest example of creating that magic. I mean, this entire like world building and storytelling and just this imagination, which I mean, has just permeated through the ages now is absolutely wonderful. And I've always loved the message of Star Wars, which is things I subscribe to, which is, yeah, believe in yourself, like tap into your inner power, all these types of things. But it's the classic, like, you know, the hero's journey, mythology stuff, which I love all that stuff. And it's just great storytelling. And there's just something about Star Wars. It really connects with me. And like I said, it's the magic side of it, and the storytelling and the character. I feel like they're friends. Like when I watch those original films, I'm like, oh,
Yeah, right.
my friends. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I still love Star Wars. I mean, you know, I guess I've become a little more critical in my older age of some of the newer things, but I still have enjoyed them. You know, I definitely dig in all the stuff on Disney Plus. I love The Mandalorian. I think it's great. I know we're gonna get the Bad Batch is coming out in like a week or two. I think on May 4th, which I'm excited about because
Big day.
I
Big
love
day
it.
for you.
Yeah, I love Clone Wars cartoons. I think they did an amazing job with that. Like Ahsoka Tano is my second favorite Star Wars character. My first favorite is the man, the myth, Boba Fett, which they did him right in this second season of Mandalorian. Spoiler alert for everybody. But I love it. I absolutely love it. I have not outgrown it. I see Star Wars and I'm like instantly like, you know, a little kid again every time.
So what's the movie? Like you got to pick one. You can only watch one for forever.
And there's only one, and it's The Empire Strikes Back, which I know is what everybody says, but that movie is it's the second part. If you've never watched the Star Wars trilogy, totally understand it, but it's a movie that is so tonally different from the first film, and it's a great second film in a trilogy where it's got a darker tinge to it, and it's just great. I mean, the characters, the storytelling, the acting is really great, and just it ends on, you know, ends dark, and then, you know, Return of the Jedi picks it up like great. And you know, I really that's a film I could watch over and over and over again as Star Wars and never get tired of it.
Yeah. You know what one I actually really liked, and I new one. It's a new one.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like the Han Solo origin story one.
Solo, yeah.
Solo. I thought that was really good because I've always liked Han Solo. I thought he was a cool character back in the day with like the pistol,
right?
You know, and like the Millennium Falcon and all that kind of stuff.
Pirate, man.
He's a pirate, and I love pirates. It's like my thing.
Yeah.
But all right. So important question, kind of getting off the Star Wars topic.
Sure.
If you have, is there like a guilty pleasure type of music that you listen to that's not punk rock or metal or anything like that?
Oh God, yeah. There's a lot of them actually, but I will say, so people will be shocked to. Well, I think so. One is I love Amy Winehouse. I think she's amazing. Her story is a tragedy, but the music she left behind is absolutely amazing. I love her. I think she was great. Another guilty pleasure of mine is the Carpenters. I know people are be like, what? Yeah. But it's something I grew up with in my house, and I've always loved the Carpenters. There's something about, and it's probably why I have such an affinity towards like female singers. Karen Carpenter's voice is just, to me, it's outstanding. It's absolutely outstanding. I also love Carole King. I love that. It's like Tapestry to me is like a perfect record.
Awesome. No, I love that. We got to, make sure we get really deep, hard-hitting questions on this episode.
I like it.
All right. So we're going to do one more question, and then we're going to get into our closing segment, which is under the spotlight. But last question before we get in there is I do want to talk about goals. So, like, what kind of goals do you have set for yourself for Rocket? And let's just take it for the next year, because I know it's still new, and you're still trying to, figure it out to a certain degree. But let's do some goals.
Yeah. I mean, my biggest goal right now with Rocket is, as you said, I'm still in year one. So my goal is to establish a really strong one-to-one practice and then take that and then build on that to a group setting. So then doing more group courses, group coaching, things along those lines. But yeah, this first year for me is focused on building a really strong one-to-one practice. And I've sort of designated my number to be 20 clients. So if I could have 20 one-to-one clients right now, I would consider year one to be a big success for me.
Right. Awesome. The other thing, I guess this kind of goes into goals, but also goes back into the podcast thing. I'm just curious, and you can't give me like one in a bunch of different buckets. You have to give me one. So like, you do the show, and I do my show, and
Right.
I have like bucket list type guests that I would want to have on the show. Do you have like your one bucket list person that you would want to have on Rocket Live?
Oh man. It's
It could be you don't have,
yeah,
it doesn't have to
yeah.
be somebody that's alive right now. It could be like,
No,
hey, like
it's
this person is the
yeah.
guy or
I
gal.
mean, it would be amazing for me. Like I draw so much inspiration. Like I think I love Gary Vee, and I know he's a very polarizing guy. But I just find him very interesting, and like him or hate him or agree or disagree. I just think he's wonderful, and I find a lot of inspiration from him. And he would just, and he's like uninterview. I feel like you get him on, and it's just like here's the mic, just go, just do your
Right.
thing, bro.
Yeah, you're
I'll
not
just
asking
record
him
it.
questions.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not asking him questions, but it would be pretty awesome to me. I mean, if I'm going bucket list or like just crazy stuff, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, like I feel like guys like George Lucas, things like that. I don't know what I could ask these guys that they haven't already been asked.
Yeah, but you never know.
But it would be cool. I mean, Eddie
Yeah.
Van Halen was somebody I always wanted to
That's
meet.
who I
'Cause-
thought you were gonna say. I
Well,
was like,
it's-
he's gonna say Eddie Van Halen.
I mean, Eddie
and-
Van Halen is somebody I've always wanted to meet, and I'm really bummed. I mean, I got as close to like fourth row to seeing them, and Eddie was just such a huge influence on my life as far as music goes,
Yeah.
and wanting to play guitar. So, unfortunately, that opportunity is not going to happen. But
Right.
but I guess if I was to go with people who aren't around anymore, then Eddie would definitely be at the top of the list as
Got
someone
it.
who's deceased, not with
Right.
us on this mortal plane anymore. But
Right. Yeah.
yeah, it would have been awesome to talk to Eddie for sure.
Yeah. All right. Cool. I mean, I love that because I'm always interested, kind of, not always interested. Some people I don't really care, but because you have so many different like interests and you're like so passionate about the stuff that you are passionate about, and you just lean into those things so hard. I was just curious to see like if you could actually pick one.
It's really hard, but I mean, I guess like those would be my quick picks. Like
Right. Yeah, I get that. All right, cool. So let's move because we've been talking for about an hour. So
wow.
let's move the show into our closing segment, which we call Under the Spotlight. So the Spotlighters, which is what I call, excuse me, the Morning Spotlight listeners, have been listening to Chris Vaglio and Mike Ham talk for an hour. They've heard us cover a lot of different stuff, from punk rock to Rocket to Gray Sky to Antler Wound to Star Wars to podcasting, a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
So what is one thing that you want the Spotlighters to walk away from this episode with? So you're under the spotlight. What do you got for us?
The biggest thing I would say is something I said a little bit earlier in the episode, but just worry about being yourself. Like, don't worry about being the person that you think everybody wants you to be, or the person you think you need to be. Like, because a person you need to be is just you. Be yourself. And I know it's not always easy. It takes a little bit of time, but I'm telling you, it's much, much better than being this like weird, like matrix version of yourself that doesn't really exist. So
Right.
I would just say really lean into being yourself, and don't worry about being this version of yourself that's not the real you.
I love
That's
that.
my best message.
Yeah, that's a perfect message. That is, I mean, that's what I try to do. And that's why I think, like I said before, I think that's why we get along really well, is because we have like a similar mindset when it comes to that kind of stuff. And we both kind of just lean into who we are. So I know you mentioned a couple times, like different places people can go to get more Chris, but give us like the highlight links.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So one of the best spots is my website, which is rockitgrowthagency.com. So that's rocket as an IT, not rocket ship, even though there's a rocket ship in my logo, but it's rockitgrowthagency.com. I am also, I do have free coaching that I'm presently giving away right now, and I'm sure when this goes into Affinity, it's fine. I'm always probably be giving away some free coaching because I don't mind giving back at all. But you go to rigacoaching.com. That's RIGA. Coaching.com takes you right to my Calendly link, and you can sign up for some free coaching right there. Of course, you can always check out my podcast, which is available anywhere you can get podcasts. I have a YouTube channel, which is just under Rocket Growth Agency. So all that stuff is there. There's a ton of other things I do too, but I'll just keep it to that. And I'm really easy to find on social media. Just at Chris Vaglio. Everything is at Chris Vaglio. You'll find me pretty fast.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll make sure that I put all those links in the show notes for everybody listening. Obviously, I'll also put the morningspotlight.com in there, and the email address for the show, which is themorningspotlight@gmail.com. So Chris, Thank you so much for coming on with us. This was probably long overdue, but I'm glad we finally got it
Me
in the
too.
books and in the can. And I just had a great time chatting with you, like I always do.
Yeah, no, this was just awesome. I really appreciate the opportunity. This was great, man. Thanks
Of
for having me
course.
on, and
Of
thanks for everybody
course.
who's listening. Thank you so much.
Yeah. We appreciate it. And like Chris said, everybody listening, the Spotlighters, thank you. And we will catch you next time.